3 days passed before the tribunal convened. During that time, Jiwoo remained in protective custody. Security brought her meals. Professor Kelvin visited twice. Hyun came once, his feathers trembling with nervousness, but he came anyway. That meant something. Daeho sent messages constantly updating her on the situation outside. The academy was in chaos. Students were divided. Some said Jiwoo had every right to defend herself. Others claimed she used excessive force. A few demanded that all Deathworld students be expelled for safety reasons. The video of the incident had gone viral across the Galactic network. News channels played it endlessly, often in slow motion, showing exactly how Jiwoo had moved. Experts analyzed the technique. Medical professionals discussed Vorkath's injuries. Politicians debated Deathworld integration policies. Earth's government had issued an official statement. They supported Jiwoo's right to self-defense but urged calm. They reminded everyone that humans had been peaceful members of the galactic community for 15 years. One incident should not undo over a decade of cooperation, but the damage was done. People were talking about humans differently now. The word dangerous appeared in most discussions. On the morning of the tribunal, security escorted Jiwoo to a large conference room. The tribunal consisted of 5 judges from 5 different species. They sat behind a curved desk looking down at where Jiwoo would stand. Behind them, a large screen displayed the Academy's official seal. The room was packed with observers. Students, faculty, media representatives, and various officials filled every seat. Jiwoo recognized Earth's ambassador to the Academy, a woman named Soo-jin who looked worried but supportive. Vorkath was there too, in a specialized hover chair that supported his still recovering body. He could move his head now and his arms were beginning to respond to commands. The medical team had said he would make a full recovery within 6 weeks. His family sat beside him, their faces showing a mixture of anger and shame. The head judge, a Colothian with multiple sensory organs, called the tribunal to order. We are here to determine if student Jiwoo of Earth acted within her rights when she responded to an assault by student Vorkath of Kryn. Both students have waived their right to private proceedings, so this tribunal is open to public observation. The judge looked directly at Jiwoo. Student Jiwoo, do you understand the charges being reviewed? Yes, Your Honor. You are not being charged with a crime at this time. This is an educational institution inquiry to determine if your actions violated Academy policy. Do you understand? Yes, Your Honor. Then let us review the evidence. The screen behind the judges lit up. It showed security footage from the lecture hall, recorded from multiple angles. The tribunal watched as Vorkath and his friends surrounded Jiwoo. They watched as he grabbed her shoulder. They watched as Jiwoo moved with that terrible, precise speed. The crack echoed through the conference room speakers. Several observers flinched. Vorkath looked away. We have also reviewed footage from the previous 3 weeks, the judge continued. Documentation of ongoing harassment including verbal abuse, property damage, physical intimidation, and equipment sabotage. The pattern is clear and extensive. One of the other judges, a flowing aquatic being in a specialized containment suit, spoke up. Student Vorkath, do you deny that you engaged in this pattern of harassment? Vorkath was silent for a moment. Then with effort he spoke. No, I do not deny it. Do you deny that you physically assaulted student Jiwoo on the morning in question? Another pause. No, I grabbed her. Why? Vorkath's eyes flickered toward Jiwoo, then away. Because she would not respond to my provocations. I wanted a reaction. You got one, the aquatic judge said dryly. A third judge, insectoid with compound eyes, addressed Jiwoo. Student Jiwoo, please describe your actions and your reasoning. Jiwoo had prepared for this. Vorkath grabbed my shoulder from behind. His claws penetrated my uniform and contacted my skin. This constituted physical assault as defined by Academy law. I responded with defensive, force intended to stop the assault. Immediately, while minimizing permanent harm, you broke his neck, the insectoid judge stated. I separated his vertebrae in a controlled manner that caused temporary paralysis but no spinal cord damage, Jiwoo corrected. The injury was calculated to be fully reversible with standard regenerative therapy. You calculated all of this in the moment of being attacked? Yes, the judges exchanged looks. The insectoid judge leaned forward. How is that possible? Jiwoo took a breath. On Earth, we train from childhood in self-defense and control techniques. Because of our world's gravity and evolutionary pressures, humans are significantly stronger than most galactic species. We learn to calibrate our responses to avoid accidental harm. When I defended myself, I automatically calculated the force needed against Vorkath's species structure. So you knew exactly how much force would break his neck? I knew how much force would stop him without killing him, yes. The room erupted in whispers. Several observers looked frightened. This was what they had feared. Humans knew how to hurt them efficiently. The head judge called for silence. Student Jiwoo, do you regret your actions? Jiwoo considered the question carefully. I regret that the situation occurred. I regret that Vorkath was injured, but I do not regret defending myself when I was assaulted. Would you do it again? If assaulted again? Yes, I have the right to defend myself. Even knowing the consequences? The fear it has created? Jiwoo met the judge's eyes. Should I have let him continue hurting me because stopping him might scare people? The judge was silent. Ambassador Sujin stood. If I may address the tribunal? The head judge nodded. Sujin approached the center of the room. I represent Earth's diplomatic corps. I have been authorized to speak on behalf of my government regarding this incident. First, I want to acknowledge the fear that has been created. We understand that seeing human capabilities displayed so dramatically is disturbing for species who did not evolve under such harsh conditions. She paused, looking at the assembled crowd, but I must also point out the injustice of the expectation that has been placed on student Jiwoo. She endured 3 weeks of escalating harassment. She reported none of it, trying to handle the situation peacefully. She avoided confrontation at every turn. When finally subjected to physical assault, she defended herself with remarkable control. And yet, Sujin continued, she is being treated as if she did something wrong. The message being sent is clear. Deathworlders must accept abuse because defending themselves is too frightening for others. That is not equality. That is not justice. Another judge, a being with multiple heads, spoke. Are you suggesting that humans should be allowed to break bones whenever they feel threatened? I'm suggesting that humans should have the same rights as everyone else, Sujin replied, including the right to self-defense. Student Jiwoo did not initiate violence. She did not use excessive force. She did not cause permanent harm. By any reasonable standard, her actions were justified. But humans are not held to reasonable standards, a voice called from the observers. You are held to stricter standards because you are more dangerous. Then tell us the rules, Sujin said, her voice rising. Tell us exactly what humans are allowed to do when assaulted. Should we just accept it? Should we leave the academy? Should we never have joined the galactic community at all? The room fell silent. Professor Kelvin stood. May I speak? The head judge nodded. I have been teaching at this academy for 40 years, Kelvin said. I have seen thousands of students from hundreds of species. I have seen fights, rivalries, and conflicts. And I will tell you something I have observed about humans. He moved to stand beside Jiwoo. They are the most controlled species I have ever encountered. Do you know why? Because they have to be. On Earth, a careless movement can kill. An uncontrolled punch can break bones. Even their children must learn restraint. I have read the classified files about Earth, Kelvin continued. I know what that world is like. And I know what it means that humans evolved there and still develop civilization, art, compassion, and diplomacy. It means they are better at controlling themselves than species who never had to learn that skill. He looked at Vorkath. Student Vorkath comes from a warrior culture. His people value displays of strength. He saw student Jiwoo's quietness as weakness when in fact it was the opposite. She was being so careful not to hurt anyone that she appeared vulnerable. When he finally pushed her past the point of endurance, she responded with exactly calibrated force. That is not savagery. That is the highest form of control. The tribunal judges conferred quietly among themselves. The head judge finally spoke. This tribunal has reached a decision. In the matter of student Jiwoo's actions, we find that she acted within her legal rights. The assault against her was documented and clear. Her response was proportional and controlled. All charges and concerns are dismissed. Relief washed through Jiwoo, but the judge continued. However, we also recognize that this incident has revealed gaps in our integration protocols. Deathworld students have been admitted to the academy without proper education of other students about their capabilities. This has led to misunderstandings and dangerous situations. The judge looked at Jiwoo. You are cleared of wrongdoing. Charity cases. That's what you are. Students were watching now. Some had their record. The lecture hall was silent. 200 students watched as Vorkath gripped Jiwoo's shoulder, his claws pressing into her uniform. He was still leaning close, his snout near her ear, confident in his dominance. Jiwoo sat perfectly still in her seat. Her datapad rested in her lap, screen still glowing with her notes. Her posture was relaxed. Her breathing was steady. If anyone had been monitoring her vital signs, they would have seen her heart rate at exactly 60 beats per minute. Combat ready. Calm. Controlled. What did you say? Vorkath demanded. He had heard her whisper but couldn't understand the foreign language. Speak in standard. Jiwoo didn't respond. She was counting in her head. 1, 2, 3. Vorkath's grip tightened. I asked you a question, human. 4, 5, 6. Look at me when I'm talking to you. 7, 8. You weak? Pathetic. 9, 10. Jiwoo moved. To the human eye, it would have looked fast, but not impossibly so. A quick reach, a twist, simple body mechanics. But to the students in the lecture hall whose species had evolved under weaker gravity, with slower nerve responses, Jiwoo simply blurred. Her right hand came up and back, fingers wrapping around Vorkath's head with perfect precision. Her left hand gripped his arm at the elbow. Then she twisted, using leverage and rotation instead of raw strength. The movement was economical, practiced, designed to disable without excess force. There was a sound, a crack that echoed through the silent amphitheater. Vorkath's eyes went wide. His grip on Jiwoo's shoulder released instantly. Then his entire body went limp, and he slumped sideways out of his seat, crashing to the floor with a heavy thud. Jiwoo lowered her hand. She looked down at her datapad. Her notes were still there, exactly where she had been reading. She hadn't even stood up. For 3 full seconds, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Then chaos erupted. Students started screaming. Some ran for the exits. Others pulled out communication devices, calling for security. Vorkath's 3 friends backed away from Jiwoo, their faces showing pure terror. Jiwoo remained seated. She glanced down at Vorkath's motionless form on the floor beside her seat. His eyes were open, moving frantically. He was conscious, but he couldn't move anything below his neck. The sound had been his vertebrae separating. Someone get medical, one student shouted. Security! We need security! She attacked him. The human attacked him. Jiwoo calmly closed her datapad and set it on the desk in front of her. She placed her hands in her lap and waited. Yun pushed through the crowd of panicking students. When he saw Vorkath on the ground and Jiwoo sitting calmly above him, his feathers went completely flat against his body. Jiwoo, he whispered. What did you do? He grabbed me, Jiwoo said simply. I defended myself. Security arrived within 30 seconds. The Academy's security team was made up of various species trained in emergency response. The team leader, a 4-armed Bessarian named Toll, entered with his weapon drawn. But when he saw the scene, he lowered it immediately, one student sitting calmly. One student on the ground, paralyzed. Nobody move, Toll ordered. His multiple eyes took in the situation quickly. You, he pointed at Jiwoo. Stand up slowly and keep your hands visible. Jiwoo did as instructed. She stood, her movements slow and deliberate, and held her hands out to her sides. Did you do this? Toll asked, gesturing to Vorkath. Yes. Why? He assaulted me, Jiwoo said. Her voice was steady, showing no emotion. He grabbed my shoulder. His claws pierced my uniform. I defended myself according to Academy Law, Section 7.3. A student has the right to use reasonable force to stop an active physical assault. Toll's eyes narrowed. You call this reasonable force? I used the minimum force necessary to neutralize the threat, Jiwoo replied. He is alive. He will recover with proper medical treatment. I stopped the assault without causing permanent damage. Medical personnel rushed in with a hover stretcher. They carefully loaded Vorkath onto it, stabilizing his neck and spine. One of them, a being with tentacles instead of hands, ran a scanning device over Vorkath's body. Cervical vertebrae separation, the medic announced. Clean break. No spinal cord damage, but complete paralysis below the neck. He needs immediate regenerative therapy. They rushed Vorkath out of the lecture hall. The remaining students stared at Jiwoo. Come with me, Toll said to Jiwoo. You're being placed in protective custody while we investigate. Am I under arrest? That depends on the investigation. Jiwoo nodded. She retrieved her datapad and allowed Tall to escort her out of the lecture hall. As they walked through the corridors, other students pressed against the walls to give them space. Word was already spreading through the station. The human girl broke someone's neck without even standing up. They took Jiwoo to a small room in the security section. It wasn't a cell exactly, but it was clearly designed to hold people. There was a bed, a chair, a desk, and nothing else. No windows except the one in the door. "Wait here," Tol said. "Don't try to leave." "I won't," Jiwoo said. The door sealed behind him. Jiwoo sat on the bed and closed her eyes. Her hands were shaking slightly. She pressed them together and focused on her breathing. She had hurt someone. Badly. Yes, it was self-defense. Yes, he had been harassing her for weeks. Yes, he had physically assaulted her first. But she had still hurt him. And there was a small, dark part of her that felt satisfied about it. That part scared her more than anything else. Hours passed. Jiwoo meditated, trying to center herself. Through the window in the door, she could see security personnel moving back and forth. Some glanced at her nervously. Others whispered to each other. Finally, Professor Kelvin arrived. His crystalline body flickered with agitated light patterns as he entered the room. "Jiwoo," he said. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine, Professor." "I saw the recordings," Kelvin said quietly. "Multiple students captured the incident on their devices. It has already been sent to the Galactic Council's Education Committee. What will happen? That depends on many things." Kelvin's lights dimmed. "The Academy is reviewing your case. There will be a formal tribunal. Representatives from various species will examine the evidence and determine if your actions were justified." "They were," Jiwoo said firmly. "He assaulted me. I stopped him. You paralyzed him." "Temporarily," Jiwoo corrected. "The medic said there was no spinal cord damage. With regenerative therapy, he will make a full recovery." "Do you understand how that sounds?" Kelvin's lights flashed brighter. "You calculated the exact amount of force needed to break his neck without killing him or causing permanent damage. You executed that calculation perfectly while being assaulted, without even standing up." Jiwoo was silent. "The galaxy is going to see this footage," Kelvin continued. "They are going to see a human being attacked and responding with such precision and control that it appears effortless. Do you know what that means?" "It means they'll be afraid," Jiwoo said quietly. "Yes, they will be afraid. Because you just reminded everyone that humans come from a world that would kill most of them in minutes. You reminded them why Earth's classification is restricted information." "I didn't want to hurt him," Jiwoo said. For the first time, her voice cracked slightly. "I tried so hard not to. I endured everything. Every insult, every shove, every humiliation. I tried to be better than my instincts." "I know you did," Kelvin said gently. "I saw you try. But you can only push a predator so far before it remembers what it is." There was a long silence. "What happens now?" Jiwoo asked. "Now we wait for the tribunal," Kelvin said. "In the meantime, you will remain here. Not as punishment, but for your own safety and the safety of others. People are afraid of me." "Yes. And fear makes people dangerous." Kelvin left. Jiwoo sat alone in the small room, thinking about everything that had happened. She thought about Vorkath, lying paralyzed in the medical bay. She thought about the terrified faces of the students. She thought about the video that was now spreading across the galaxy. She thought about her mother's tears and her brother's warnings. Her datapad, which security had left with her, beeped with a message. It was from Daeho. "I saw what happened. Are you okay? Do you need anything?" Jiwoo stared at the message for a long time before responding. "I'm fine. Thank you for asking. What you did was justified. Everyone knows that. He's been harassing you for weeks." "I know. Then why do you seem sad?" Jiwoo thought about that question. Why was she sad? She had defended herself. She had followed the law. She had even shown incredible restraint by not causing permanent damage. But she had still crossed a line she had sworn never to cross. She had used her Deathworld strength against someone from a softer world. She had proven that humans were dangerous because I wanted to be better. She typed back. "I wanted to prove that humans could control themselves. That we could live peacefully among other species." "You did control yourself," Daeho replied. "You endured harassment for weeks. You gave him every chance to stop. When he finally crossed the line into assault, you defended yourself with exactly the right amount of force. That is control. It doesn't feel like it. Because you're human," Daeho wrote. We're taught from childhood that our strength is dangerous, that we need to be gentle because everyone else is fragile. But there's a difference between being gentle and being a victim. You defended yourself. There's no shame in that. Jiwoo read his words. The next 3 weeks brought a pattern that Jiwoo recognized all too well. Vorkath had decided she was his target, and he made sure everyone at the academy knew it. In the cafeteria, he would deliberately bump into her, making her spill her food. In the hallways, he would block her path, forcing her to walk around him while he made comments about weak humans and soft-worlders. During shared classes, he would speak loudly over her when she tried to answer questions. Jiwoo endured it all with the same calm expression she always wore. She cleaned up spilled food without complaint. She took longer routes to avoid confrontation. She stopped raising her hand in classes that Vorkath attended. Other students noticed. Some looked away, uncomfortable with the harassment but unwilling to get involved. Others watched with curiosity, wondering why the human girl never fought back. A few tried to help, but Vorkath's reputation kept most people at a safe distance. Professor Kelvin noticed too. The crystalline instructor had been teaching at the academy for 40 years, and he had seen many types of students. He had also made a point of learning about every species under his care, including humans. What he had learned about Earth had troubled him deeply. After one class, he asked Jiwoo to stay behind. The other students filed out, including Vorkath, who shot Jiwoo a meaningful look as he left. Miss Jiwoo, Professor Kelvin said. His species communicated through light patterns that flickered across his translucent body, which were translated into speech by the universal translators everyone wore. I want to discuss something with you. Yes, Professor? I am aware of the situation with student Vorkath, Kelvin said carefully. You have not filed any complaints, but I have witnessed several incidents myself. It's nothing I can't handle, Jiwoo said. I'm sure that's true. Professor Kelvin's lights flickered in a pattern that suggested concern. I have been reading about Earth. Did you know that your planet's classification is restricted information in most of the galaxy? Jiwoo nodded. I know. The Council doesn't advertise that Earth is a Class 12 death world. For good reason, Kelvin said. Most species find the classification frightening. The gravity alone would crush the majority of galactic citizens. Your atmosphere would corrode their lungs. Your predators would hunt our predators. We're not our planet, Jiwoo said quietly. Humans are peaceful. You are peaceful by choice, Kelvin corrected. That is not the same thing as being inherently peaceful. I want you to know that under Academy law, you have the right to defend yourself if Vorkath escalates to physical assault, but I also want you to understand the consequences of such a defense. Jiwoo met his eyes, or the spots where eyes would be on a human. What consequences? If you hurt him even in legitimate self-defense, it will confirm every fear the galaxy has about Deathworlders. It will make integration harder for every human who comes after you. I know, Jiwoo said. That's why I haven't responded. Professor Kelvin's lights dimmed slightly, a sign of sadness in his species. That is an unfair burden to place on a student. It's the burden I chose when I applied to the academy. After that conversation, Jiwoo returned to her routine. She attended classes, studied hard, and scored at the top of every exam. She exercised in the gravity gym, where she could adjust the settings to match Earth's pull. She meditated in her quarters, practicing the breathing techniques that kept her calm. But things continued to escalate. One day in the zero-gravity maneuvering class, Jiwoo's equipment malfunctioned. The magnetic boots that allowed students to move in the practice chamber suddenly deactivated, sending her spinning into the center of the room. The instructor rushed to help, but Jiwoo had already corrected her spin using nothing but body positioning and physics. She caught herself on the far wall and completed the exercise perfectly, using pure momentum and timing. When the class ended, Hyun found Vorkath laughing with his friends near the equipment lockers. Did you sabotage Jiwoo's gear? Hyun demanded, his feathers ruffling with anger. For his normally timid species, this was a significant display. Vorkath looked down at the small Valerian and grinned. Prove it, bird. Hyun wanted to say more, but one of Vorkath's friends stepped forward threateningly. Hyun backed away. He found Jiwoo in the changing area, checking her boots for damage. He did it, Hyun said, his voice shaking with anger and fear. Vorkath sabotaged your equipment. You could have been hurt, but I wasn't, Jiwoo said. She seemed more interested in understanding how the sabotage had been done than in being angry about it. You need to report this, Yun insisted. This is beyond harassment. This is attempted assault. Without proof, it's just an accusation, Jiwoo said. And even with proof, what would happen? He'd get a warning. Maybe a temporary suspension. It wouldn't solve anything. Then what will solve it? Hyun's voice rose with frustration. You cannot just endure forever. He is getting worse. Jiwoo looked at her friend. Hyun had been kind to her from the first day, despite being naturally nervous around humans. He had made an effort to understand her culture, to learn about Earth. He was trying to protect her now, even though he was terrified of Vorkath. I'm handling it, Jiwoo said softly. Trust me. But Hyun was right about one thing. Vorkath was getting worse. The harassment became more physical. Vorkath started shoving Jiwoo in the hallways, hard enough to make her stumble. He would stand over her during meals, blocking her light, making eating uncomfortable. He began spreading rumors about humans, saying they were genetically inferior, that Earth's admission to the Galactic Council had been a political mistake. Daeho confronted Jiwoo about it one evening in the gym. They were the only ones there, both working out in the section set to Earth's gravity. Daeho was lifting weights that would be impossible for most galactic species. Jiwoo was practicing her forms, moving through martial arts sequences that looked like a dance. You need to end this, Daeho said, setting down his weights. Vorkath is out of control. I'm aware, Jiwoo said, not breaking her rhythm. Then why won't you do anything? Daeho stepped in front of her, forcing her to stop. You're making us look weak. Making all humans look weak. I'm making us look controlled, Jiwoo countered. There's a difference. To you, maybe. To them? Daeho gestured toward the door. To the rest of the galaxy? They see a human being bullied and not fighting back. They think we're soft? Let them think that, Jiwoo said. It's better than the alternative. Which is what? Them being afraid of us, Daeho shook his head. Maybe they should be a little afraid. Maybe that would make them respect us. Respect built on fear isn't respect, Jiwoo said quietly. It's just fear with a different name. They didn't speak for the rest of the workout. Daeho left before Jiwoo finished, clearly frustrated with her refusal to act. That night, Jiwoo lay awake in her quarters, staring at the ceiling. She thought about home, about her family. Her mother had cried when Jiwoo had been accepted to the academy. Her father had been proud but worried. Her younger brother had begged her not to go, saying the aliens would be mean to her. He had been right. Jiwoo pulled up files on her datapad, reading about Earth's classification again. Class 12 Deathworld, lethal atmosphere, crushing gravity, extreme weather, aggressive megafauna, venomous insects, bacterial and viral loads that would kill most galactic species within hours. And humans had not just survived there. They had thrived. They had conquered their world, climbed to the top of the food chain, and then looked up at the stars and decided to go there too. Every human carried that legacy in their genes. Denser bones, stronger muscles, more efficient organs, faster healing, greater endurance. Humans were persistence predators, evolved to chase prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. They were pack hunters with complex social structures. They were tool users with opposable thumbs and incredible hand-eye coordination. They were, by galactic standards, terrifying. And Jiwoo had been taught to hide all of that behind a mask of gentleness and civility. She closed her eyes and practiced her breathing exercises. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4, hold for 4. Her heart rate slowed. Her muscles relaxed. The tension in her jaw eased, but something inside her was changing. Something she had kept locked away for a long time was starting to crack. The next morning, Jiwoo arrived early to her xenobiology lecture. She took her usual seat in the center of the amphitheater-style room and began reviewing her notes. Other students filtered in gradually. Professor Kelvin was not there yet, held up by some administrative meeting. Vorkath arrived with his 3 friends. They saw Jiwoo sitting alone and exchanged glances. Then they split up, positioning themselves around her. Vorkath sat directly behind her. His friends took seats on either side and in front. The lecture hall filled with other students, but no one sat near Jiwoo and her harassers. Everyone could sense that something was going to happen. Vorkath leaned forward. "Good morning, soft-worlder," he said loudly enough for others to hear. "Ready to fail another practical exam?" Jiwoo didn't respond. She continued reading her notes. One of Vorkath's friends, a being with multiple arms, reached over and flicked Jiwoo's datapad. She caught it before it fell, still not looking at them. "I heard something interesting," Vorkath continued. I heard that humans are only at this academy because the council felt sorry for your primitive species. Jiwoo sat in the corner of the observation deck, her datapad glowing softly in her lap. Around her, students from a dozen different species moved through the common area of Galactic Academy Station Terminus 7. Some walked on 2 legs, others on 4 or 6. Some floated using internal gas bladders. A few moved along the walls using specialized limbs. Jiwoo paid them little attention as she studied her xenobiology notes. The human girl had been at the academy for 3 months now. She kept to herself mostly, attending classes and spending her free time reading or exercising in the gravity gym. The other students had learned to recognize her easily enough. She was one of only 2 humans at the entire station, and her dark hair and compact build stood out among the taller, more delicate frames of most galactic species. Hyun landed on the seat beside her with a soft flutter of feathered wings. The Valerian student folded his wings carefully against his back and tilted his head to look at Jiwoo's screen. His species reminded Jiwoo of the birds back on Earth, though Hyun stood nearly 5 feet tall and could speak perfectly well. "Still studying?" Hyun asked, his voice carrying the musical quality common to his people. "The exam is not until next week," Jiwoo smiled slightly. "I like to be prepared." "You are always prepared," Hyun said. "I have never seen you score below perfect on any test. Professor Kelvin says you have the best grades in the xenobiology program." "Professor Kelvin is kind," Jiwoo replied quietly. She continued reading, but her attention shifted slightly when she heard loud voices near the entrance. A group of students entered the observation deck, led by a massive reptilian figure. Vorkath stood over 8 feet tall, his scales gleaming deep green under the station's lights. He was Kryn, a warrior caste member of a species known throughout the galaxy for their strength and aggression. Vorkath's eyes swept the room and landed on Jiwoo. A grin spread across his snout, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Look," he said loudly to his companions. "The soft-worlder is studying again. Does the little human think she can learn real science?" His 3 friends laughed. They were from different species, but all came from worlds with lower gravity than Earth. To them, physical power and size meant everything. Jiwoo did not look up. She turned the page on her datapad and continued reading. Hyun shifted nervously beside her. "Maybe we should go to the library," he whispered. "It's fine," Jiwoo said softly. Vorkath walked closer. His footsteps were heavy, making soft thuds even on the deck's cushioned floor. He stopped directly in front of Jiwoo's table, casting a shadow over her datapad. "I'm talking to you, human," Vorkath said. "It's rude to ignore someone." Jiwoo looked up slowly. Her dark eyes met Vorkath's golden ones. "I heard you," she said calmly. I chose not to respond. Vorkath's friends laughed again, but there was an edge to it now. No one spoke to Vorkath that way. "You chose?" Vorkath leaned forward, placing his clawed hands on the table. "You think you have choices here? You're only at this academy because your planet begged the council for a spot. Everyone knows humans are weak. Your world is barely classified for space travel." "Earth is classified for space travel," Jiwoo said. Her voice remained level, showing no emotion. "We have been part of the Galactic Council for 15 years. 15 years, Vorkath snorted. "My species has been in space for 3,000 years. We built empires while your kind was still playing in mud." Jiwoo returned her attention to her datapad. "Is there something you need, Vorkath?" "I have studying to do." Vorkath's tail lashed behind him, a sign of anger among his people. With a quick movement, he swept his hand across the table, knocking Jiwoo's datapad onto the floor. It clattered loudly, and several students nearby turned to watch. Hyun made a small sound of distress. Jiwoo simply looked at her fallen datapad, then at Vorkath. Without a word, she stood, walked around the table, and picked up the device. She checked it for damage, found none, and moved to a different table on the far side of the observation deck. Vorkath stared after her, surprised by her lack of reaction. "That's right," he called out. "Run away, soft-worlder. That's what your kind does best." Jiwoo sat down at the new table and resumed reading. Hyun followed quickly, his wings trembling slightly. "Jiwoo," Hyun whispered urgently, "you should report him to Professor Kelvin. What he did was against Academy rules." "It was just a datapad," Jiwoo said. "No harm done." "But he will continue," Hyun insisted. "I know Kryn behavior. They respect only strength. If you show weakness, he will escalate. I'm not showing weakness, Jiwoo said quietly. I'm showing control. Hyun looked confused but said nothing more. They studied in silence for another hour until the observation deck began to empty. Students headed to their quarters for the sleep cycle. The academy ran on a standard galactic day of 26 hours, which Jiwoo had adapted to easily enough. As they walked toward the dormitory section, Hyun kept glancing at Jiwoo. May I ask you something? He said finally. Of course, why did you not get angry? When Vorkath insulted you and broke your property, Jiwoo considered the question. They walked past a viewport showing the vast darkness of space, scattered with distant stars. On Earth, she said slowly, we have a saying. The loudest person in the room is often the weakest. Real strength doesn't need to announce itself. But Vorkath is strong, Hyun said. By galactic standards, the Kryn are among the most physically powerful species. By galactic standards, Jiwoo repeated. She smiled slightly, but there was something in her expression that made Hyun nervous, though he could not say why. They reached the dormitory wing and parted ways. Jiwoo entered her small quarters and sealed the door behind her. The room was sparse, containing only a sleeping platform, a desk, and a small area for personal belongings. She had decorated it minimally, with a single photograph of her family back on Earth and a small plant that somehow survived the station's recycled air. Jiwoo sat on her sleeping platform and closed her eyes. She focused on her breathing, a meditation technique she had learned as a child. In through the nose for 4 counts, hold for 4, out through the mouth for 4, hold for 4. Her heart rate, which had never risen above 60 beats per minute during the entire encounter with Vorkath, slowed even further. The truth was, Jiwoo had been angry. Very angry, but she had also been trained since childhood to control that anger. On Earth, everyone learned control. When you lived on a world where the gravity could crush visitors from other planets, where the atmosphere was considered corrosive by galactic standards, where even the smallest predators were deadly by universal comparison, you learned to be careful with your strength. Jiwoo had been holding back her entire life. It was as natural to her as breathing. She opened her eyes and looked at her hands. They were small by human standards, with slim fingers and neat nails. To anyone else at the academy, they would look delicate, even fragile. Jiwoo knew better. These hands had been trained in 3 different martial arts. They could strike with enough force to break bones that had evolved under 1/3 Earth's gravity. But Jiwoo had not come to the academy to fight. She had come to learn, to be part of the galactic community, to prove that humans could integrate peacefully with other species. Violence would undo all of that, so she would endure. She would stay quiet. She would control herself. A message notification blinked on her wall screen. Jiwoo stood and activated it. The face of Daeho appeared, the only other human at the academy. He was grinning, his athletic build evident even through the screen. Hey Jiwoo, he said. I heard about the thing with Vorkath. You okay? I'm fine, Jiwoo replied. You know, Daeho said, his smile fading. You don't have to take that. Academy rules allow for self-defense. If he touches you, you're within your rights to respond. I know the rules, do you? Daeho leaned closer to the camera. Because his species only respects strength. Staying quiet is just going to make him think you're an easy target. Jiwoo was silent for a moment. I know what happens when I stop being quiet, she said finally. Daeho studied her face through the screen. Then he nodded slowly. All right. But if you need backup, call me. We humans need to stick together out here. Thank you, Daeho. The screen went dark. Jiwoo prepared for sleep, changing into her rest clothes and dimming the lights. As she lay on the sleeping platform, she thought about home. About Earth's heavy gravity that made her feel light here on the station. About the thick atmosphere that had built her lungs strong and efficient. About the endless competition of life on a death world that had made humanity into what it was. The galaxy called Earth a Class 12 death world. One of the most dangerous planets that had ever produced spacefaring life. The Galactic Council had been shocked when humans had developed space travel, because species from death worlds rarely survived long enough to reach for the stars. But humans had. And now Jiwoo carried all of that evolutionary pressure in her small frame, wrapped in a quiet exterior that made others think she was weak. She closed her eyes and slept. Tomorrow would bring more classes, more studying, and likely more harassment from Vorkath. Jiwoo would endure it all, for now. 2 weeks after the tribunal, Jiwoo sat in an empty classroom preparing her first lecture. Professor Kelvin's proposal had been approved. Starting this semester, all first-year students would take a mandatory course called Comparative Xenobiology, with a focus on Deathworld species. Jiwoo and Daeho would be the primary instructors, with Kelvin supervising. It was strange being on the teaching side. Jiwoo was still a student herself, but the administration felt that having humans explain their own evolution would be more effective than a professor reading from files. They were probably right, but that didn't make it less terrifying. The classroom door opened. Hyun entered, carrying 2 containers of what passed for food at the academy. "I brought lunch," he said. "You have been here for 6 hours." Jiwoo smiled. "Thank you." They ate in companionable silence for a while. Hyun had been her constant supporter since the incident. His natural nervousness around humans had been replaced by something deeper. Understanding, maybe, or just friendship that had been tested and survived. "Are you nervous about teaching?" Hyun asked. "Very," Jiwoo admitted. "What if I say the wrong thing? What if I make people more afraid instead of less?" "You will say the right things," Hyun said with confidence that Jiwoo wished she shared. "You always do." "I broke someone's neck, Hyun." "Yes. And you explained why and how, and you took responsibility for it. That is more than most would do." Hyun's head tilted in the way it did when he was thinking carefully. "Do you know what I have learned from being your friend?" "What?" "That humans are very good at being afraid of themselves," Hyun said. "Every other species fears what they cannot control. But humans fear what they can control. You are more frightened of your own strength than we are." Jiwoo considered that. "Maybe. On Earth, we grow up knowing we could hurt people if we're not careful. Children learn that before they learn to read. And that makes you gentler than you would be otherwise," Hyun said. "Not weaker, gentler. There is a difference." The door opened again. Daeho entered, looking energetic as always. "Ready for our first class tomorrow?" "No," Jiwoo said honestly. "Good, that means you care." Daeho pulled up a chair. "I've been working on the curriculum. I think we should start with basic Earth facts. Gravity, atmosphere, temperature ranges. Let them understand the environment before we explain how humans adapted to it." "That makes sense," Jiwoo agreed. "Then we move into evolutionary pressures. Predators, diseases, weather events. Show them that Earth isn't trying to kill humans specifically. It's just a very active, very competitive environment. And then the human response to those pressures," Jiwoo continued. "Physical adaptations, social structures, technological innovation." "Exactly." Daeho grinned. "By the end, they should understand that humans are strong because we had to be. Not because we're aggressive or violent by nature." Hyun listened to them plan, occasionally offering suggestions from an outsider's perspective. It was helpful, having someone who could point out what might confuse or frighten students from low-gravity worlds. That evening, Jiwoo received an unexpected message. It was from Vorkath. She stared at the notification for a long time before opening it. Vorkath had recovered enough to use his communication device, though he was still in the medical wing awaiting transport back to his homeworld. The message was short. "May I speak with you?" "Face to face." Jiwoo showed it to Daeho, who had stayed late to help with preparations. "Do you want to?" he asked. "I don't know. Maybe I should?" "Only if you want to," Daeho said firmly. "You don't owe him anything." "Maybe not. But maybe we both need closure." The next morning, Jiwoo went to the medical wing. Security escorted her, which felt both necessary and sad. She was cleared of all charges, but they still watched her like she might snap someone else's neck at any moment. Vorkath was sitting up in his recovery bed, his spine fully healed now. He could move normally again, though he would need physical therapy to regain full strength. When he saw Jiwoo enter, something complicated crossed his face. "Shame, maybe, or regret. Thank you for coming," he said quietly. Jiwoo sat in the chair provided, keeping a respectful distance. "What did you want to say?" Vorkath was silent for a moment, clearly struggling with words. Finally, he spoke. "I need to apologize. And I need to explain, though explanation is not excuse." "I'm listening." "On my world, strength is everything. Warriors prove themselves through combat and dominance. When I came here and saw you so small and quiet, I thought you were weak. I thought you were easy prey." He looked down at his hands. "I was taught that the strong should test the weak, that this is how natural order works. But you weren't testing me," Jiwoo said. "You were bullying me." Yes, I see that now. Vorkath met her eyes. In my culture, if someone is truly strong, they show it immediately. They display their power. You did not do this. You stayed quiet, avoided conflict, absorbed everything I did. To me, this confirmed weakness. To me, it was control, Jiwoo said. I understand that now. After you, he gestured to his neck. After what you did, I had a lot of time to think. The medical staff, they told me about Earth. About what it takes to evolve there. About why humans are the way you are. Vorkath's tail moved, and what Jiwoo had learned was a gesture of respect among his people. You were not showing weakness. You were showing mercy. You were being so careful not to hurt me that I mistook gentleness for inability. I poked a sleeping predator for weeks, and you never once lost control. Until I gave you no choice. I always had a choice, Jiwoo said quietly. I chose to endure. Then I chose to defend myself. And you did so with such precision that you broke my neck without killing me or causing permanent damage. Vorkath shook his head. Do you understand how terrifying that is? That you calculated that in a split second? I understand now, Jiwoo said. I didn't mean to scare everyone. I just meant to stop you. You did both. Vorkath leaned back against his pillows. I am being expelled. My family is ashamed. I brought dishonor to my house. But I deserved this outcome. And you defended yourself properly. By my people's laws and yours. I'm sorry you're being expelled, Jiwoo said, surprising herself. She meant it, though. Do not be. I need to return home and learn what real strength is. Not the strength to hurt others, but the strength to control oneself. The strength you showed every day when you endured my harassment. They sat in silence for a moment. I have been asked to testify, Vorkath continued, about Deathworld rights, about integration. I have agreed. I will tell them what I learned. That underestimating Deathworlders is dangerous, yes, but also that humans have been living among us for 15 years without incidents like this, because they are incredibly controlled. That I created this situation through my own ignorance and arrogance. That's good of you, Jiwoo said. It is the least I can do. Vorkath's eyes showed genuine remorse. I cannot undo what I did, but I can try to prevent others from making my mistake. From seeing quiet as weak. From confusing mercy with inability. Jiwoo stood. I should go. I have a class to teach tomorrow. About humans. About Deathworld evolution. About why we are the way we are. Good, Vorkath said. They need to understand. I wish I had understood sooner. As Jiwoo turned to leave, Vorkath called out. Jiwoo, thank you. For what? For not killing me. You could have, easily. But you chose exactly the right amount of force. That choice, that control, that is real strength. I understand that now. Jiwoo nodded and left. As she walked back through the station, she thought about Vorkath's words. About strength and control. About the difference between power and violence. That evening, she finished preparing her lecture. Tomorrow, she would stand in front of 50 first-year students and try to explain what it meant to be human. What it meant to come from a world that tried to kill you every day and still choose peace. Still choose gentleness. Still choose control. The next morning, the classroom was packed. Word had spread about the new course. Students wanted to understand. Some were frightened. Others were curious. A few looked angry, like they resented being forced to learn about humans. Jiwoo stood at the front of the room with Daeho beside her. Professor Kelvin sat in the back, observing but not interfering. Good morning, Jiwoo began. Her voice was steady, though her hands wanted to shake. My name is Jiwoo. This is Daeho. We are both from Earth. Over the next semester, we will be teaching you about our world and how it shaped us. She pulled up an image on the screen behind her. Earth blue and green and beautiful, floating in space. This is Earth, Jiwoo continued. It is classified as a Class 12 Deathworld. That means it is one of the most hostile planets that has ever produced spacefaring life. Today, we are going to talk about why. Over the next hour, Jiwoo and Daeho walked the students through Earth's environment. The crushing gravity, the corrosive atmosphere, the extreme weather, the aggressive predators at every level of the food chain, the diseases and parasites, the poisonous plants and venomous animals. The students listened with growing horror and fascination. Now, Daeho said, you might be wondering how any species survives in such an environment, let alone develops civilization. The answer is adaptation. Humans are not strong because we chose to be. We are strong because we had to be. Jiwoo pulled up anatomical diagrams. Higher bone density to withstand gravity. more efficient muscles. Redun